This is the last episode of our Little Women podcasts. Here on the Sangwon-dong channel, if you find these reviews interesting, subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to be promptly informed of the new podcasts. In the previous episode, we discussed the screenplay of Little Women. It's a multifaceted, multi-genre screenplay that's not easy to visualize. This is because the director needs to skillfully bridge the gaps between all events, branches, and genres to establish a connection. An essential task that, if failed, not only jeopardizes the director's work, but also turns the entire series into a chaotic mess that offers nothing but confusion to the viewer. In this episode of our Little Women podcast, we'll discuss the visual language of this series and its direction. To understand the unique and unconventional direction approach chosen by Kim Hee-won for this innovative screenplay, you wouldn't need to watch the series for long. However, before we delve into Kim Hee-won's strategies, it's important to remember that when watching a movie or series, you are essentially the camera, and the spatial and locational perspective of the camera is the only viewpoint you have. Essentially, since you aren't physically present at the movie or series location, you perceive the world of the series precisely as the camera captures it. Now, what's that supposed to mean? Right in the first minute during the opening sequence, when the older sisters are celebrating Ina's birthday, we are confronted with the unconventional and unfamiliar direction of Little Women. From the very beginning of the series, in those first moments, we encounter this insert shot that the director has chosen. A somewhat peculiar and unusual shot, which is challenging to be found in K-dramas or cinema. So unreal, in fact, that if you were to place yourself in the camera's position and view your home from this angle, it would probably be an odd and new experience for you. Later on, we see this emphasized shot again, where the camera position feels like you're secretly observing Inju and In-kyung. Kim Hee-won quickly begins character development using camera angles without a hint of dialogue, showcasing the contrasting personalities of Inju and In-kyung. Let's revisit the shot. The two sisters are excitedly talking about Ine. Enthusiastic, Inju taps her feet while the introverted In-kyung remains still and calm. See? Character development can be this simple, and with a little more attention, one can discern the nuanced differences in the directorial levels of various series. By now, you should realize that Kim Hee-won's solution to the peculiar screenplay of Little Women is to behave even more peculiarly. Of course, it's not just the camera's odd positioning that evokes this sense of strangeness. For instance, in one sequence, the director, by blurring the surroundings, draws exaggerated attention to the veil and later to Kim Go-eun's sad facial expression, simultaneously making the image exaggerated and unrealistic by eliminating background details. The peak of this departure from reality, which the director accomplishes using various techniques, can be observed in the conclusions of episodes 6 and 8. Here, the series reaches the zenith of merging reality with the world of illusions. Sequences initiated by the Blue Orchid, which made the viewer suspicious, have been hinted at long before. So, where do we first see this orchid? The answer lies in the first half of the series' first episode, where we take a glimpse at the flower tattooed on the ankle of Inju's colleague, Hwa-young. This mysterious orchid, which we see in many places up until episode 6, and since the first few episodes we saw it in, were during the crime and murder scenes, makes ordinary locations seem mysterious and enigmatic to us later on, which is also true for these red shoes.
뭐야? 구두까지 샀어?
Here, you can see the camera rotation that deviates from the horizontal axis, resulting in an inclined view. This angle, referred to as the Dutch angle, induces feelings of imbalance, confusion, and anxiety in the viewer. Kim Hee-won uses this technique to visually represent and convey the dizziness Inju is experiencing to the viewer. Later, in the climax of episode 8, the two techniques that we had mentioned, the Dutch angle and the focus pull, are combined to perfectly visualize Inju's drowsiness caused by consuming the orchid extract. It's worth noting that this angle that was used in the series Vincenzo was complementary to the events of the series. Here, Kim Hee-won takes the weapon out of focus to draw our attention to Vincenzo's revenge, brilliantly portrayed through Song Joong-ki's exceptional facial expression. However, in Little Women, the main focus of the sequence isn't the act of revenge, but rather the momentary thrill we feel upon seeing the weapon. It's noteworthy that this isn't the only reference Little Women makes to Vincenzo. If you pay close attention, the rooftop in this series is the same rooftop in Vincenzo. Another fundamental aspect is the use of music. While we discussed its role in setting the mood and maintaining the series' coherence in the second part of our podcast, here we want to examine it from a directorial perspective. Music in Little Women is one of the crucial factors that introduces a fantasy ambience to the series. To understand this, let's revisit the birthday sequence of Ine in the first episode. From the very beginning, pleasant atmospheric music immerses us, which contrasts with the lives of the three contrasting sisters. For instance, placing dramatic background music on these sequences would seem much more fitting, but the objective of Little Women's screenplay isn't to highlight drama. So in synchronization with the screenplay, the director overlays the sequence with fantasy-like music, altering our entire perception of the sequence.
이내 잘 부탁해. 가서 편지할게.
Of course, that's not the only purpose of the music. The director uses grand music pieces resembling classical tracks, and more importantly, they deliver a bustling and disorienting rhythm to heighten excitement and tension. How? These music pieces do two things. Firstly, due to their rapid rhythm, they accelerate you. And secondly, owing to their grandeur borrowed from classical tracks, they completely captivate your attention, emphasizing the topic's importance.
같이 갈 거예요, 말 거예요?
가요.
The result is that even though the sequence seems serious before being resolved by the screenplay, with the addition of music, it becomes exaggerated in its importance. The screenplay's role here is crucial, with the conclusion of episode 8 amid this sequence keeping the viewer on edge. It should be noted that this kind of use of background music was also employed by Kim Hee-won in the series Vincenzo. He's gradually becoming one of this director's signature acts.
장준우. 빈센조 변호사님? 무릎 꿇어. 갑자기 무슨 일이에요? 무릎.
Finally, the last frequently used technique by Kim Hee-won that we can mention is the slow motion technique. To briefly discuss the function of slow motion in cinema, it's quite similar to what we had discussed earlier regarding the music genre of Little Women in crucial and dramatic sequences. Essentially, slow motion exaggerates situations and emphasizes emotions. Imagine the results when these two elements, classical music and slow motion, are combined. It's a cinematic masterpiece. The best example we can cite here is the sequence where Hyun wins the Daesung Award using Ina's painting. Let's observe the directorial elements that make this sequence captivating. The music initiates a feeling of tension and slow motion amplifies it. The sound of cheering gradually fades, replaced by the sound of nervous scribbling on the award-winning painting with J-cut editing. Through his skills, Kim Hee-won elevates these ordinary sequences into memorable moments. If you're still skeptical about Kim Hee-won's exceptional capability, watch the brilliant focus shift from director Shin's gaze to the arcade. It crafts the riddle in your mind, facilitating the pacing of this sequence. Well, that concludes Little Women, and this was the last episode of our Little Women podcast series. We hope that you enjoyed it and found it informative. If you enjoy following such content, please consider subscribing to us and hit the notification bell so you're informed as soon as we upload our new videos. Thanks for listening to us. Goodbye!